Okay, just so far with the implementation of the system and the BSC, we are still on schedule. We have finished what we call our fact gathering and validation of what is the current flows and what the new flows will be. We've worked very hard in working with the agencies, 270 special subject matter experts, confirming the information, getting everyone to understand the new flows. We have started and basically completed what we call our fit gap analysis and our conference room pilots, where we actually show the agencies what they'll be getting with the new system. That went very well. And we are right now at the point where we are looking at the controls of the new flows. There's another piece on the another item on the agenda that we could talk to later on about that. System design will start basically in August, bring us through October, November, and then we start implementing the system itself with programming. We are looking to finish, start testing rather, in 2010, in June of 2010. We're going to be working with the agencies for data transfer and cleansing of the old data into the new systems in the fourth quarter. Finalizing our hardware, tuning of all the different hardware we need. This is very high level, by the way. These are the high level. There's a bunch of other things that are going on in here, but I just wanted to give you some of the high level ones. We are still ready, very much on schedule to go live 1/1/2011 with the new system and opening the Business Service Center with the new system up and running. So that red mark shows you where we are. I'd like to do is every time we meet, give you new ones so you can see where we are in relationship to these high-level tasks. But right now, we're in pretty good shape in implementing as we had planned. No issues there. With real estate, we have located using the MTA's real estate department and the people with New York City Transit. We've identified 100 seats available at 2 Broadway, which Kevin McKenna has worked with us. Thank you, Kevin. Finding in his area available location for us to use for one of our 3 different operations. And we're looking for space so we can open the doors until the final plan of where we're going to be is established. And that's going very well. We need that in place now because we have to have that real estate ready by June of next year, because we have to start testing our systems, getting hardware ready. So even though we have it to January 11 to open the doors, we have to get everything ready by June. So that's going really well. We are working with the agencies on developing a workforce transition plan so that we would see when people would come over, when they would be trained, and we have a group of different HR people from all the agencies that are developing that plan. We have been working on that now for about a month or so, and that will be reviewed by the presidents hopefully in the next couple of months. As far as projects we've already achieved at the BSC, we have finished implementing a new database with all of historical information for the different procurement information that we are now using with our review panel. We have the BSC review panel. We just started using that, and actually one of the agencies has just asked us for information, because consolidated information. We work with New York City Transit on a data request, so they could see different things, but not only from their agency, but from all the MTA regarding procurements. That's done. We've just finished implementing, and it's going live for Joe Smith of the bus companies. They asked us to put together 3 different systems so he could physically look at all the inventory at 3 different systems that are stored in 3 different systems at multiple locations. He got a demo of that the other day, loved it, signed off on it, and we're implementing this week and next week. That will help him make better decisions on what bus parts he has, what he doesn't. We started that 4 months ago, got it on, went right on schedule. It didn't cost us anything extra. We did it with all internal staff, and it went really well. We also have put together an all-agency HR database. By the way, these databases, we discussed this the last time, they're not going to waste when we go live. They are becoming where we're cleansing the data, and they will be used by the new PeopleSoft system as well as a data warehousing. But we're bringing those up front now so we can use them a year before we go live with our systems, and it's amazing how people need this information. So, as far as new business, we did finish the study on procurement. It's now with the presidents who are reviewing it about bringing procurement processes into the BSC. we hope to get back to the board as soon as that review is finished. And as I said before, the procurement process review has been up and the procurement review panel has been up and running now for 3 months. What we're seeing is more and more joint procurements are coming to us before we even question them, and I think it's working very well. The agencies seem to be working much closer together. We're looking over that. We've stopped about 3 or 4, and we're working on joint procurements with that. So that's going really well, and all the agencies are really very helpful with that, and we seem to have no problems with that at all. Let's see. As far as I met with the working committee, and we have updated our ROI calculations, trying to set up a meeting with that committee in the next month or so. What is ROI? A return on investment, I'm sorry. The ROI calculation is our return on investment. The original one is where you made your decision as a board. We just redid that based on new numbers, and I'm happy to say we're still a year ahead of that schedule. So the study talked about over 6 years. We are now going to do this within 5 years. We'll have your money back. It's how quickly we return the money that you're laying out for the BSC. A lot of that's got to do with the cost reduction of putting the BSC in place. We've done a lot up front, so we reduced the amount of spending with consultants because we did it ourselves, and we limited a lot of expenses up front. And that's all I have to report. Any questions? Everything's going well.
I understand there were some internal control questions in regards to the Long Island bus payroll. And I was wondering if you could just tell us where that is. And
yeah, we're working very closely with Tom Del Sorbo of the bus company. They are working with a very old payroll system, and they can't wait until 2011 when we light up our new ones. So I'm working very closely with them. We did the design drawings. We're putting in an older system that's better than the one they have called GIAC. There's no additional cost because we're using internal resources and we're using existing systems. And I'm working with them on a new timekeeping system called Kronos. It came to the board this month. I'm working with Kronos for an all-agency approach as well. We have one now in place, a contract where we're getting really good rates, but we intend on getting better rates with Kronos. Working with Tom, they started that. They're hoping to get that up and running as soon as possible. Because the age of the system, because how hard it is to work, I've worked very closely with them, and they're on their way to getting a better system way before 211. And then when 211 comes, we will take the new Kronos timekeeping system, connect that to the new PeopleSoft payroll system, and it will just fit in perfectly. They need to do that now because there are some control issues with their current system. I remember meeting their controller about a year ago, and that was the first thing he was really concerned about is the payroll. So we're working towards something better even a year before we go live with PeopleSoft.
Good. Any questions? Mark?
So the payroll system you're working on with the bus company is going to be a company-wide payroll system?
Company-wide for the bus companies.
Yes.
Yes. Their controller's here. I did see him. If you have, if you need more detail, I'm sure he would. But I may be able to answer your questions.
As I understood it, for a while we were basically dependent under contract on various of the private companies or the remnants of them for the payroll function that we were using. Have we managed to get out of that, or does this enable us to get out of that?
This enables us to get out of it. That was one of the primary reasons.
Yeah.
We had an antiquated VAC system, and the JTG system that we were using, the AS400 that we're paying a contract to, we'll be able to, with 90 days notice, remove ourselves from that contract, which we see in ROI before 2011 when we move over to the BSC payroll system.
And the hope is that we'll be on this interim payroll system when?
Well, the hope was that the TA is on GIAC, Long Island Bus is on GIAC, now all MTA Bus will be on GIAC, and that should make the conversion easier to the BSC program because we are scrubbing all the data We're getting everything laid out in the system. We'll be running over a year fully on that system before the expected date.
Maybe I just wasn't listening properly, but the time when you expect the bus company to be onto this interim system?
We're partly on it right now with what's called non-reps. With reps, we should be on by January 1 of 2009.
2010.
10, I mean.
Yeah, a year before.
At which point you will have totally left behind the contract systems you've been running on?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally off.
Now, the timekeeping system, which is Kronos, will probably take a little longer, but it's the payroll system that's the issue. So I believe it is 1/1/2010, which gives us a year until we go live with the other one. And what Arnold said Harris said was very good to say again. By putting it into a GX system and scrubbing the data, that's all done. So that'll help us with the conversion into PeopleSoft.
Any other questions for Lenny? Okay, Len, stay right where you are. Okay, next thing on the agenda is the approval of additional audit services for the MTA Business Service Center internal accounting controls. The committee is requested to approve additional audit services proposed by Deloitte & Touche to review and evaluate the internal controls being put into place at the BSC that will affect the conduct of the MTA's financial audit. This review is a one-time occurrence and necessary for the audits of fiscal years 2011. A copy of the proposal is included in the book on page 13, I believe. And I'd like to ask David to come up and maybe answer whatever questions the committee may have.
Hello?
Dave, I think my first question is the question I think that will be asked is, why isn't this part of our normal audit, and why is it extra? I think that's the real question.
Well, I think the question is it basically there's a material change that's going to occur in the internal control structure, the internal controls of the MTA. And actually, given the way that the organization is created, these are additive controls. So they're controls that didn't exist before, and in many respects will be in addition to the controls that already exist. So it is a new process, and in looking at transactions from cradle to grave, the beginning to the end, I mean, we really do have to look at those, understand those controls, understand the impact on the financial statements, and understand their impact on the audit. So it was something that we would have to do, something that we didn't contemplate, because the evolution of the BSC is continuing to evolve and will continue to evolve, and will have a material consequence on the controls and a material impact on the audit.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah. I mean, this could hardly be a surprise to you in that this planned operating structure has been in prospect for some time and certainly elaborately discussed. I go back to the question of whether, to what extent this is actually a new, unexpected task that you are faced with and therefore charging us for, as opposed to something that was highly predictable and very much something that was in prospect when you signed up here.
Mark, I would say that we knew that there were conversations going on about the Business Service Center, but what was included and what types of activities were going to occur in the Business Service Center, we didn't contemplate it. When we proposed on your audit, we proposed on the controls that existed in place at that point in time because it was unknown. And I think to some degree it's still unknown what activities will be ongoing in the Business Service Center. So we didn't contemplate it. And it is, by the way, in addition to the controls that already exist, because a lot of those controls are not going to be eliminated, this is a very new process. Because transactions are still, originate within each of the operating entities, and to a great extent, everything other than activities that go on recording and financial reporting will go there. And by the way, the financial reporting is still going to be consistent with where it's been.
Do you think the current control systems are adequate?
We haven't had a material weakness in the control structure.
And those are going to continue to
For the
govern
most part,
these transactions?
but there will be new controls that will exist in the Business Service Center. And it will somewhat
Do
change.
we need a new layer of controls of this kind if the others are in fact adequate, as you just said?
But, well, I guess the issue is if you look at, I mean, the reason for creating a Business Service Center is not necessarily about improving controls, although it tends to happen because of that. It's about improving the efficiency of operations. And by the way, anybody that has implemented a BSC will say that the layers of controls are greater and that the controls are greater. So it's an improvement. It more likely than not will be an improvement. But, you know, there was not a material weakness in controls. It's just the fact that it's changing. Did I answer your question?
I mean, it leaves me with a remaining bottom line, but no, you have not really satisfied my concern that I was raising in terms of whether this is actually an unexpected incremental piece of work that shouldn't have been contemplated in our original relationship.
Clearly.
Yes.
At least in my mind. I mean, I'm going to tell you, and I can also, Mark, say that we've never been to this committee, you know, in my history of being here, and I've been here a while, asking for changes in scope. I mean, we just don't have a history of doing that. You know, I've really never done that. Pardon? I'm sorry? I didn't. But, hey, Mark, if it weren't material, I wouldn't be asking you. I really wouldn't be. I mean, it is, by the way, let me say this, that if you look at the current scope of work that we have for the audit, the MTA, about 35% of that is related to controls and our work around controls. This is, you know, significantly less than that, but it's still additive. It's a new process. And all we're about is what, you know, is looking at what time we're spending. And we will, and didn't contemplate. And by the way, still can't tell you exactly, you know, what the impact will be on the audit of the BSC. I will say this, and I've always been honorable with you guys. If we don't incur additional time, I'll deal with it. I've always done that.
Any other questions?
This is a one-time cost, or as more pieces migrate towards Business Services Center, is this going to be a recurring?
Actually, it depends just on the amount of time and effort that's required to look at it, Toreen. I would think that the majority, you know, the issue is basically obtaining an understanding. And actually, I'm going to say, the MTA, and rightfully so, is asking us to be involved in early. Now, this is not an issue for the 2009 audit. It's really an issue for future audits. The question is what's the appropriate timing of having auditor involvement? Our past experience here tells us that it's better that we're involved at some earlier point than it is way after the fact, because we have some recent experiences with that. And as people had discussions with me, that was my strong suggestion to them. And I think under most circumstances where there are material changes to there is a tendency to have auditors involved earlier versus not. And as a result of that, there is a little additional effort associated with that involvement, because now we're looking at proposals versus looking at the final process.
As far as timing, in my opinion, it's better now. We are just wrapping up. When we wrap up the flows, which we've just about, I'd rather get their opinion now than after I program.
Yeah, the letter makes the case for doing it now versus later.
One more question, Dave. I know our internal audit staff has been working with, instead of making sure those internal controls work. This proposal of yours, does that help? Do you use some of their work to?
You know, because it is so material to the audit, we can't. I mean, because of just the processes. We can look at the documentation that they have, and certainly that helps, and we do contemplate that. We can look at the documentation that's been gathered by others in this process, and that helps a lot. But the actual issue of understanding the controls that exist, analyzing, evaluating, and testing those has to reside with us.
Jim? You know, I understand that it's probably better to get you involved now than it is later, but I want to reiterate something that I think is on all the board members' minds, which is our purpose behind Business Services Center was to reduce costs, not increase them. So I'm hoping that we'll see something like that in the future.
And just
By
along
the way,
those...
I don't know. I really haven't been involved, but I would expect that as the Business Service Center is developing processes, my understanding, having discussion, I mean, it's about eliminating duplicative processes and about eliminating other stuff without, by the way, while adding controls. Is that fair, Lenny?
I guess that this question of while adding controls, I mean, to follow on what was just said, the prospect of just adding layers of review to an already rather cumbersome procurement process is not very attractive. And when you describe our existing controls as adequate and that they are going to continue, and then there will be an added realm of controls in this additional layer, it's not a very encouraging prospect. I would hope that in some way, if you are going to have reviews in the central procurement, it would at least lessen the amount of time and energy required prior to the central procurement in terms of your review. So there'd be some offsetting benefit.
You know, it's a little bit of the consequence. By the way, I mean, the issue is about consolidating operations that exist in multiple places into one. So you get that natural efficiency. As it relates to controls from you know, an auditor standpoint of views and checks and balances, because the MTA does have very distinct businesses that all have its distinct structure of controls that exist within each of the operating divisions. They have different policies, procedures, you know, across all of the organizations. There will be a point in time, at least when it goes to the Business Service Center, where those processes become one. But before they get to the BSC, they still have their processes in place. Mark, I mean, that's the reality of the organization.
Just to give you an example, we're not going to maintain all of the controls that are in place right now. The BSC is picking up controls where, for instance, when we do payroll, we'll be getting files from the agency's timekeeping records. We have to have a control, which is brand new, that says, this is what was sent to me and this is what I'm paying. So that control's new, okay? But other controls for accounts payable at the agencies will go away with accounts payable because I will have new controls put in place because they don't do accounts payable anymore. So maybe the way it was said, it made it sound like you're going to keep all 100% of your controls and we're going to add another 100%. That's not correct. What we may do is
flavor.
Yes, and I see where you're coming from, and you're not. You're going to lose whatever full functions are coming over. The agencies won't have to control those anymore. I will. What I will have to control is any data they're sending me to process those.
But
so you lose some, you gain some.
So what I was saying
And you gain
is
consistency as well. Instead of having those controls spread out among
have
all
a
the agencies,
single standard.
you have a single standard that we test against.
And that's a good thing, because when you have the standardization, your control's easier to maintain and it's cheaper to maintain. You may not have that now throughout the agencies. That's one of the other reasons we're doing the BSC, to become standard, to become more efficient. And we're seeing that. We are taking and we're standardizing a lot of things. So I see where you're coming from, Mark, and I don't think they're going to keep 100%. I know they're not. It's just then you're just adding another layer of, as you say, but that's not true. you're taking away layers, you're adding new ones, and that's why I think it's important someone looks at those new layers and says, yeah, they are controlled. I know the CFOs from every agency, it's very, very keen on that and wants that as well, because they're just concerned that we're not just going to run amok and not process things the way they would have in a controlled environment. I know this guy is too. So.
My concern is that it's always extremely easy to add additional layers of review for control and safety, which all sound marvelous. But I hope that in adding the additional layers, you will have equal zeal to subtract others.
Absolutely.
And that should be the problem.
I agree with
Right.
you, and that will happen.
I'm a little confused. How much is the request for this proposal? The add-on, is it 52,000 or is it 200,000?
It's 200,000.
I guess the comment that confuses me is the last sentence is because of our long-standing relationship, we're not including the cost of the time of these individuals in our estimate, that being the partners and.
Well, let me tell you what that says, and that is absolutely true. I have not, by the way, a lot of time will be spent by me in that, and a lot of time will be spent by Glenn Friedrich in that. All we're asking for is actually the staff hours. So, you know, as it relates to those of us, we're not asking for anything in addition.
So you're asking for 52, not 200?
No, I'm asking for 200. It's about 52 for each control process they're adding, or they're asking us to look at. It's about $52,000. So we're asking for 200,000.
That's 4 processes.
It's 4 processors.
There are 4 major processes. Now, some of the things that are going to be, some of the things that I think, somebody asked it before. If we add new business to the BSC, they're also looking at the process flows for systems that are going up, even though we don't have that function right now. For instance, let's say procurement. We're putting a full procurement system in place, and they're going to look at that function, that system requirement controls. So when and if that function comes to the BSC, the controls are already in place. So they shouldn't be looking at that again, because the system has been checked off and said, okay, the controls are in place with the agencies buying the procurements. So that's not something that they should come back and look at again, in my opinion.
Well, we're starting to understand this, but the letter should have gone through internal control, because it's confusing to me, and obviously to other board members.
One question. How much is the BSC supposed to save?
We have a
annually?
return on investment, we should get our money back within 5 years, approximately 5
In
years.
5 years. And does that include this additional audit cost?
No, this is something, it's so small to
Small
the numbers.
Right, okay.
It's not going to impact it like an extra month or whatever. You know, it's so
Okay.
small. It's a one-time shot, too. If
Okay.
it was continuous every
Well, this is a one-time shot, so the thinking is that next year's audit plan from Deloitte will not include an additional amount, that it will be absorbed because there's less oversight in the agencies. Not oversight, but less controls.
The
there's less-
issue is that there's incremental time as they're putting it up to understand it.
Right,
We
it's a-
won't
it's a
have to
one-time
redo the
cost.
understanding.
Right, okay.
I mean, we may have to do some extra testing. I don't suspect that's going to be all that material, but it will require us to have additional effort on an ongoing basis.
It will.
It will. But, I mean, it's not real material, I don't think.
Okay. Well, how much?
I don't know. Until we get there. It's not, actually, it's even hard for me to
But-
estimate this because it's so early, and I've said that. That's a little bit about why
Right.
the letter's the way it is.
But probably less than this.
Oh, much less than that.
Okay.
And what I'm saying, unless it's really substantial, you won't see me back here.
Okay.
Any other questions? I need a motion to accept. Okay, we've had discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, carried. Now, the one thing I may ask too is that we've had some discussion about getting the reporting of the BSC to the Finance Committee. That we, as a support group here at Audit, shouldn't be looking at an agency because our job is to oversee that. So in the future, maybe we can get it off to the Finance Committee and let them do the reporting, which they just done right here.
You know, I'd just like to comment that because the Finance Committee's agenda is so full, particularly on certain months, that it's been good to have the reporting here because it's had a lot more scrutiny than it would have under Finance and the more constrained schedule. But now that we're up and running, I'm not complaining about it. I just want to say that I thought this was well placed at the time.
Okay, next thing on the agenda, there's let's see, under a separate cover, the committee has been provided with an all-agency internal controls report and certification submitted to the New York State Division of Budget on the Executive Director's signature for 2008 and 9 filing period, as required by the New York State Governmental Accountability Audit and Internal Control Act. Included in the formal audit committee agenda book is a summary memo that highlights some of the actions taken by the agency internal control officers over the past years. I'd like to add that this was, we talked about this a little bit in governance, and this is one of those things that one of our extraordinary administrative costs in being an independent authority. These are the things that are requested of us that wouldn't be requested of us if we didn't have such tremendous oversight at the state level, with more coming.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Again, each year, we do prepare the internal control certification and summary. It is prepared by the internal control officers for each of the agencies, and then it comes to me, and we consolidate it into a single report on behalf of the MTA. Once again this year, I have found that we are completely compliant with the requirements of the New York State Internal Control Act. And if you have any questions regarding the certification or the summary, either myself or the internal control officer for each of the agencies are here to answer any questions that you may have.
The only question I have is how do our audit recommendations look from the standpoint of being taken care of?
Okay. At this point, I have two that I would like to bring to your attention, which have exceeded that 6-month grace period that you had asked us to maintain. We have one report that was issued by the MTA Inspector General's Office regarding improving MTA's disadvantaged minority and women-owned business enterprise, the contract provisions. There were 5 recommendations issued in that report, and at this point we still have 5 recommendations outstanding, and they have exceeded that 6-month grace period. In addition, there is another report monitoring and enforcement deficiencies at the MTA Office of Civil Rights Disadvantaged Business Program. There were a total of 18 recommendations in that report, and at this point there are only 4 that are still outstanding. I have spoken to Mr. Gardner, the MTA's Chief Diversity Officer, and he has sent, I believe, a representative, if he's not here himself, to speak on those issues if you would like.
Would like, sure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Naeem Dean, Deputy Director of the MTA Office of Civil Rights, and to my left is...
Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Green. I am the Assistant Director for Certification.
There were recommendations about modifying our contract language, which we have, and we submitted to our General Counsels for review. We have got comments from them, and we are in the process of giving it back to the agencies for their review in a day or so. And those would be changes to the boilerplate language in our contracts. In addition to that, there was a recommendation regarding a firm which had been certified by our office for the MTA. And if you could address that issue, please.
Fine. The firm we're talking about is Electrical Distribution Services. The firm was certified as a DBE by us. However, the MTA IG report addresses their behavior on contracts that were state contracts where they had WBE certification. They recommended that we decertify the firm. However, our response is that there has been no information provided on EDS's participation on federally funded contracts, which addresses any kind of impropriety. So therefore, we don't have the jurisdiction to remove on them at this point in time. What we did do, however, is a copy of the MTA IG report was sent to New York State Empire Development, and we made them aware of the conduct that EDS participated on in the state-funded contracts and recommended that they review it and take appropriate action.
And as I said, I did speak to Mr. Gardner myself directly regarding these. As you know, he has just started as the new Chief Diversity Officer, and he has committed to making sure that these are, in fact, implemented as quickly as possible.
Any questions?
I'll add something to that. I think that since Mr. Gardner has taken over, the actions that have been taken are about as fast as you can go, and I appreciate that from the staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just have one other item, recommendation. As you know, from the Corporate Governance Committee, we have begun a process of reviewing policies and procedures. And one of the things I am going to recommend that this committee take a look at is the guidelines which were issued regarding internal controls for the MTA. I believe it's probably a good opportunity and a good time for us to take a look at those and possibly review those as well.
Okay.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is, I think everyone received the 2009 Audit Plan Status Report. I'll briefly go through this with us. Before they do, I'd like to, I talked to Mike, and I always feel that Mike and his people never get enough credit. They come in here and they sit, they listen to us talk. There's 170 different audits that Mike has been commissioned to do during the course of this year. And so consequently, and he's really, the people he works for are our agencies. And our agencies call him to look at areas that they're concerned about. So I asked Mike to, every month, give us an update on what he's working on, just in name, and to come back maybe quarterly and give us some detailed reports on what he's found in some of those audits, rather than us having to worry, not hear about it and not giving Mike the proposal. Okay?
Good. Jim, be glad to do that for the committee.
You're on.
Okay. In the audit committee package, you'll find a report that updates our audit plan as of June 30th. This is the executive summary of audits that were completed the first 6 months of 2009 by individual agency. This information reports has been provided to the agency presidents and the executive director. In this presentation, I would like to reemphasize our 2009 goals for the committee, review the overall audit plan status as of mid-year, share the results of our management surveys, review our plans for the second half of 2009, and answer any questions the committee may have. We have aligned our audit and management support services with MTA's business functions in order to achieve the objectives listed on this page. This is a summary allocation of our actual resources to be provided to the agencies. This is consistent with the resource allocations presented to you in January when the committee approved our 2009 audit plan. Again, one of the challenges of the department is to provide audit coverage for MTA headquarters, as well as its 6 agencies, on a consistent basis while considering overall risk to the MTA. This slide illustrates the level of audit commitment against MTA business functions. As planned and considering the MTA's financial situation, over a third of our effort is in this financial stability area, which includes MTA finances, revenues, and procurements. As we conduct our work, we have placed our emphasis on best practices amongst the agencies and also externally to them in order to assure that these practices are most efficient and effective as possible while not jeopardizing the internal control structure. Under each category, you will see an updated snapshot of the types of activities in our audit plan that were approved by the committee in January. We have made very good inroads in several of the areas listed on this chart pertaining to advertising revenues, fare collection, inventory controls, medical benefits, the capital program, track maintenance, and technology. The biggest change to our plan was the addition of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds, which is listed under the capital program section, and I'll go over that in detail with you in a few minutes. As I mentioned, I submitted for your review summary details of all of our audits issued in the first half of this year, and in January I will issue a summary details of all the audits we complete for the remainder of the year. In summary, the first half of 2009 has been very productive. We completed 103 projects and 117 contract audits with 370 recommendations. Our plan calls for completing about 170 audits in the finance, compliance, and operational areas. At this point, we're on target to complete the audit plan and will keep the committee apprised of any changes. Our significant savings and cost efficiencies were in the areas of medical payments, advertising, workforce, procurement, and material controls. In the contract area, we question costs relating to contractors' overhead and labor rates of $15.5 million. That brings our potential savings in this area to $31.6 million for the first 6 months. The two areas I want to go over the committee with, first, for the Business Service Center, and as Len DeSimone has shared with the committee in previous meetings, I have assigned 6 auditors to ensure adequate oversight over the business workflow processes being developed. We will focus our reviews on the formulation of adequate internal controls, workflow efficiencies, as the committee just discussed, and quality assurance. 2 additional auditors were assigned to the procurement review panel that Len has just mentioned to you, that was established in concert with the board to ensure opportunities for joint procurements are identified. Secondly, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act is a federal economic stimulus package signed into law February 17, 2009. The MTA will receive approximately $1.1 billion of these funds. To ensure public transparency over the use of these funds, MTA management requested audit services to provide close oversight and audit coverage over the awarding, performance, and reporting of these contracts to ensure compliance with the federal act. Further, Lamont Kurse, the MTA Chief Compliance Officer, and the Inspector General are coordinating with the state's working group to ensure compliance for the MTA as well, and we are coordinating very closely with both of them. We will stay close to the life of these contracts, which is expected to be the next 3 years, so we've included my work plan during that time to include these contracts. As the committee knows, we sign up to annual performance goals with each agency president. Part of these agreements is a commitment to survey the agencies to obtain feedback on our performance. We sent out more than 83 surveys earlier this year to each agency head and senior management where we've had involvement. We've received back 77 surveys from management. The results of the survey information is reviewed, summarized, analyzed for trends, followed up where appropriate with the respondents. We are requesting scores between 1 and 5, looking for 3 as an indicator of good performance. We once again received overall positive results, and these scores were received from the presidents, and they're consistent with what we had received from management as well. For the second half of 2009, we'll continue to support organizational initiatives. We'll complete our 2009 audit plan, and we will coordinate our activities with the listed external oversight groups, including the MTA Inspector General, independent accounting firms, City State Control Office, and agency management. So with that, that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Okay.
What is the cost of your operation?
My annual budget is about $9.3 million a year. You'd be remiss to find an auditor general that doesn't tell you it doesn't need more people. But I would say with the resources we have are fair and equitable, and we will perform what's needed with those resources, considering the financial constraints that we're under.
Any other questions or comments? Mike?
In the audit areas, was performance indicators, service delivery, where was there an audit of any performance indicators? I didn't see any.
That's listed in the audits that we plan to do for the whole year. Some completed. 2009. Some have been completed, some have not.
Oh, okay.
So by the end of 2009, we all completed those. Those include MDBF. We do a follow-up on the on-time performance at New York City Transit, which we did a lot of work last year. So
Yeah, I know. I
those will
saw
be
the
done.
new statistics. I'd like to sit down with you about the Long Island Railroad, maybe about.
Sure. If you just
you
go
know,
through the
all
chair.
certificates that are better.
Sure. If you go through the chair, I'd be glad to do that.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to do that. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I guess I've got two. Are you looking into the contract health benefit matter that has been raised recently?
Yes, I have it, sir.
And do you expect a conclusion on that when?
We're in the process of conducting our audit, and I expect in the next few weeks to be completed.
Now, a wholly different subject. Our existence as an independent public authority in the state of New York, and what that is going to require of us in additional reporting and review under currently proposed legislation. You know, being wary of just adding another layer of expense here, I wonder if we could reasonably efficiently maintain a record of the costs and benefits of our newly defined status as an independent authority going forward. Because if we were able to actually clearly quantify that subject, I think it could be helpful in the ongoing dialogue. It's very easy to just lose additional draws on our time, skills, productivity in the kind of swamp of day-to-day business, so that you never actually see what the cost or benefit of a change of that kind might actually be for the enterprise.
And that coupled with the existing processes that we do.
Mark, this came up at the governance committee meeting, and I know Helena Williams is putting together a matrix under the new guidance from Albany, and she was going to look into somehow quantifying the cost of us living up to all the...
Then great minds think alike.
Okay, any other questions for Mike?
Thank you.
Thank you. I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Carried.